Hello everyone, welcome to the Other Side 2020 presidential debates coverage. As you all know, we are a podcast in which we do a lot of debates because we are former competitive national, international champion debaters. So we've decided that we want to do some coverage on the presidential debates, and who better to analyze these debates other than those stupid talking heads on CNN and Fox than some people who've actually been in high-level debates.
You really don't like the talking heads, do you?
I actually saw their takes last night. They weren't that bad. They were all right, but I think we have some interesting stuff to say. Who do you think won the debate? We'll start with that.
If I'm being 100% honest, I think that picking a clear winner in the debate's a little difficult, but I do think that if I had to deduce it to one thing, I think that I probably have to say Trump won the debate.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is because, like, in debates, there are often differing goals and objectives. Like, nobody comes into a debate on neutral ground. There are certain topics that are more lopsided. There are certain kind of geopolitical scenarios that make one side stronger than another, but in presidential debates they shift the objectives, and I think that Trump's objective was to muddle the field, was to produce an attitudinal kind of vision of Biden as weak, and I think that all of those things ended up happening. I think that Biden didn't really focus the debate where he wanted to, which was the question of policy itself.
Yeah.
So because I think that Trump achieved to some degree his goal, and I don't think that Biden achieved what needed to be his goal, at least, I gotta give it to Trump in the worst fashion I've ever seen. It was not a clean win, it was not pretty, but I think Trump probably gets through the first debate with a slight win. I also don't think there's an incentive for more debates. I don't know, I'm not
Based on how crappy that debate was?
Yeah, it's just, if you want to know who the clear loser of that debate was, the answer is Chris Wallace, and we'll talk about Chris Wallace later. But you gotta admit, Chris Wallace tried. You gotta admit, Chris Wallace tried. Like, stop ragging on the guy.
People were saying Joe Rogan would do a bet. I don't know if anybody could have stopped Trump from babbling as much as he did and interrupting. I think Trump also won the debate. However, to me it's weird because I think Trump won in terms of rhetoric and the animation of theater that comes with debate. When we did debate in high school, one of the biggest things was the argument matters, but the way you get the person in the back of the room, in this case the judge or the American people, to perceive the way you are communicating through rhetoric, through linguistics, through animation, through humor, through whatever emotion you can elicit within those people, it kind of matters more sometimes than the arguments. Because the American people are not like political analysts, right? They don't know every detail of the Green New Deal.
They also don't care about it.
And they also don't care. But they do know lines like, I've done more in 47 months than you've done in 47 years. Like, when I heard that, I was like, goodness. And if I'm the average American, I'm like, you know what? To be honest, Biden has been in there for 47 years, and what has he done, right? Like I don't know. It's 47 years, and there's not a signature bill attached to your name other than a bill that locked up a lot of black people.
Talk about that too.
And it's, so I think Trump won the debate. However, I do think if Trump just didn't interrupt as much as he did, and I thought the interruptions were valid at some moments because he really would hammer it, like, did your son get $3 million? Did he get Those interruptions are valid because Biden obviously doesn't want to answer, and it's like you keep pushing him. But when it's just not letting him speak for his allotted 2 minutes, then I think the American people were just like, all right, is this a child? Like, we need to have some type of civil discourse here. But I do think he won because I think Biden did not hammer him on the things he needs to hammer him, which is policy.
Yeah. I will say this. So, do we want to like jump into the kind of?
You're good.
Oh, sorry. Do we just want to jump into the general kind of attitudinal things that happened, because there was a lot going on. So I think that the perfect way to start this is by talking about the form of the debate, not necessarily the format, but the way that they came in. So Biden comes in relatively strong, actually, more animated than he's been maybe ever. Telling Trump, can you shut up for a minute?
I mean, he was getting through full sentences too,
right?
Which I actually was scared he wouldn't be able to do.
It was very odd, but I was like, as an intro, he's doing pretty okay.
Right.
It continued to slip further on because I think that Trump's interruptions rattled him.
Yes.
As the debate progressed. But at the very least, the introduction was animated. Similarly, I didn't think Trump came in as animated as I thought that he would.
Yes.
So it almost seemed as though the roles were reversed, and I was like, we're seeing differing sides. And by the end of the debate, I was like, oh, that's the Joe I remember, and that's the Trump I remember.
Right. I'd agree with that. I think that one of the biggest things I saw when Biden came into this is he kind of had these pre-rehearsed lines that he was ready to drop. Like, Trump says he's the art of the deal, but China has been the art of the steal. And, like, I got it. I got the rhetoric he was trying to go for. I don't think that was a good argument because I think Trump's been doing a lot more to help with China. But overall, I think both of them wanted to come in and land punches, right? Trump wanted to say a bunch of things to accuse him of certain things, and Biden wanted to blame the entire COVID situation on them. Ultimately, I think we both ended up thinking Trump won just because his interruptions were more impactful for people, and Biden wasn't able to capitalize on specific moments. So
yeah, I also the last thing I think in terms of like, because we should talk about that interruption tactic as well, because obviously the place where Trump gets closest in terms of losing is the fact that the frequency of the interruptions was ridiculous. But the tactic itself, right? It's meant to do two things. First, it's meant to project strength.
Yes.
That Trump refuses to be walked over or lied on, you know, if you perceive those things to be lies.
Yes.
And two is that it's meant to confuse and disorient Joe Biden, who's had a lot of trouble in the past remaining like focused in confrontation. Like remember when Joe Biden almost got into a fight with some random dude and like challenged him to like a push-up contest or something like that.
Yep.
It's like in direct confrontation, Joe Biden has been shown in the past to be unable to handle, and I think Trump tested the waters in terms of that. The problem is once Trump smelled blood, he didn't know how to back off once he had accomplished a task, which is why the frequency became so annoying.
Right.
But as a tactic, you gotta admit, the interruption thing was genius.
Yeah.
From the jump. And it was, you could tell it was planned. It was not pure impetulance. It was definitely at some point like Trump was like, I think I can just interrupt him and he can't say anything.
Yeah, I think the thing about Trump is like, and again, this goes back, and I think this is where we'll end it, and then we'll get into our specific analysis and some videos in the description for the specific topics that we were talked about. But he has desensitized a $1 trillion media empire and I think all of the American people to the point where he can do anything, and I just don't think we care anymore. And like we say we care, we'll tweet about it, but we don't care enough. Like we just don't care enough. So when he's interrupting and he's fighting with Chris Wallace, I think one, that's exciting the base. The base is getting super, super excited that he's not backing down and like he's being this like presidential leader who's like asserting himself. And the rest of us are like, well, that's what Trump does. He's not this respectful political figure that lets the time fly by and engages in civil discourse. He didn't get elected by engaging in civil discourse. That's not who he is. So I think the crux of the debate is that, or the crux of this argument is that Trump won the debate by being himself and Biden did not. Oh, it's kind of the same thing with Bernie, right? Like Bernie was playing too nice against Biden the whole presidential campaign, right? He never really got mad at him because Bernie wanted to always be on the upper echelon of moral superiority or whatever. I think the closest Biden got to playing on Trump's level was saying, shut up, man, which is just not enough, right?
Good question.
You got to do more.
Is that moral so the idea of the Democratic Party as the party that upholds democratic values is something that they've been running on since 2008,
yes.
Right?
I think Obama really ushered that in with his demeanor, his ability to
Is that strategy outdated?
I think in the context of Trump, it's absolutely outdated.
Like, is it worth fighting fire with fire at this point in the context of someone like Trump?
Yeah.
And does a leader like Joe Biden have the capacity?
But that's the argument. I don't think Biden or Joe had the capacity to do that. I think if Kamala maybe was the actual president, she would like really slap back. But we need someone who is a populist who just doesn't care. Like the thing about these presidential candidates is they actually care what people think of what they say. The thing about Trump is he just doesn't care. He'll say anything, and he's like, "What's the worst that could happen?" And that's how he's become the president because he says ridiculous stuff. The worst that could happen is some Twitter storm, and then you move on. And I think the Democratic Party has not associated themselves with that level of sensationalization in their words, which means they always try to fight with these types of moral, like, you're the worst president ever, without actually saying why you're the worst president ever.
You heard it here first. What we need is a left-wing populist.
We do. That's not as nice as Bernie. Like, that's someone who actually is ready to fight fire with fire. So yeah, I think we both agree Trump definitely won this debate. Biden could have won the debate because there were a lot of moments that he could have capitalized on.
Oh yeah, Trump. I'm just gonna be 100% honest. From what I've seen, Trump sucked. I think part of the reason why is Trump didn't have a kind of landmark stand-up thing to attach to Biden that was particular. Like, yes, you have a 47-year career, but when someone's had a 47-year career, they've been through everything and have already kind of figured out. Like, like, yes, the crime bill thing happened, but like Biden's been fighting the crime bill since the early 2000s. So
Right.
he's pretty much played 20 years of defense against.
And
the
he has a
crime
pretty
bill.
good argument that a lot of the Black Congressional Caucus supported that bill.
Yeah, but the thing about it is, like the fundamental difference between the way that Trump operated in 2016 and the way that he has to operate against Biden is that there's no landmark thing to attach to Biden the way that he did to Hillary, like with Benghazi.
Right.
Right. It's like
Or the emails.
at least that Trump hasn't, or that Biden hasn't already played a ton of defense against. So he had to do things that were about Biden's personality, which ironically was something that he couldn't do in 2016 because it would have made him seem too sexist, because he would have been like, oh, your personality is weak, as a woman, you're
Right.
because he couldn't do that. So the roles have been reversed, and I think that he's having a little bit of trouble playing that. The closest he got to doing something like that was being like, Hunter Biden did this, which like being like your son did something problematic is probably not. It's nowhere near the level of like outrageous that will win you or swing you the election as you did something problematic, which is what happened in 2016.
That is a really, really good point. Let's talk about some of the stuff that we just saw. So this was on the topic of race relations. One of the biggest things Biden called him out for is not being able to condemn white supremacy. This goes back to a couple of years ago when Trump said there were good people on both sides. Obviously, there were Nazis on some sides and people got killed from the Nazis on the other side. So we're like, how is there good people? And ever since then, Trump has like kind of refused to condemn white supremacists very clearly because a lot of his base apparently gets riled up by that, or at least that's the only obvious reason for why he's not condemning it. David, what were your thoughts on the race relations, and who do you think won that portion of the debate?
Well, so here's the thing. Again, I think it's one of those, like, I think that Trump made a point to play defense. I think that Trump made a giant mistake with that Proud Boys line.
Yep.
But then I don't think Biden capitalizes on the fact that that was a mistake. He's kind of just like, I'm Joe Biden.
And before we continue, this is the problem with what I saw in the CNN coverage after. It's like they were like going crazy over how Trump called out the Proud Boys, as they should. But no one decided to say anything about why Biden said nothing about capitalizing on that moment. Like as soon as he said Proud Boys, Biden should have been like, are you kidding me? You can't say white supremacy is bad. What does stand by mean? Like what does that mean? That's not condemning anything. And I think that's the main problem where Biden loses on.
Because here's the thing, stand by means hold on. You might need to come in, but hold on.
You might need to watch those polls.
You need to wait before you commit violence. And it's just like, that's not saying they shouldn't commit violence. You just told them that they need to be that they need to be ready. That's literally what stand by means.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I'm like, that is the worst thing you could possibly say, but there's not enough of a pushback to make me feel as though it's bad, especially given what the base wanted.
Right.
It's like,
especially specific segments of the base. How do you feel that Trump brought up the crime bill as a major reason for why Biden should not be seen as like a more ethical person when it comes to race relations?
Actually, so that kind of segment, I think we talked about this, seems practiced. It seemed like they had been ready to use that as a retort and a response.
Yeah.
I think that Trump did a pretty decent job of just being like, yeah, but like you called them super predators, but then you want to blame me. Here's the thing: is I think that he could have done more to be like, this is the implication and impact of the policy that you have that you like supported. But I'm not sure he was ready to have that debate again in terms of how specific the policy was. But I think that the glossed over level is like, you are not ethical and you are a hypocrite. And I think that was very well placed.
Right. Yeah, and the problem was like, do you think Biden had a response to the crime bill stuff? Because this is the same thing that Hillary had with super predators back in 2016, which is when people were like, Trump's a racist, and they were like, but she's the one who said super predators. What was Biden's response? Because I don't remember what the response was in the debate. I just remember he was like, that was over 20 years ago, and he got into this line about the suburbs now.
Yeah, I think he also made a claim at some point about how actually, ironically, it was like it was a little bit further down, but he was like, we've stopped like violent crime, the Obama administration when he was the vice president reduced violent crime by 17%.
Yeah.
Right. So he tried to play very very offensive statistics that were almost meant to justify it. What I don't think he did a great job on in that same regard was the comment about like the police.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Let's transition into that now. Yeah.
So he hits everybody with the bad apples comment, right? He's like, the most police are good. There are a few bad apples. And at one point makes a claim that what we need to do is produce more resources for the police.
Yeah.
Now, Trump did this a few times in the debate. He leans in and is like, Joe, you just lost the radical left.
And that was really funny.
Yeah.
Because he's like,
hilarious.
He's like, hey guys, he's not your guy anymore. Like, don't vote for him.
And there was not a moment where I was like, oh, he's right. He just lost the radical left.
Yeah.
More than that moment.
Yeah.
When they asked him, do you support the Black Lives Matter proposal in terms of community policing, and he was like, most police aren't bad. We need to give the police more resources, et cetera, et cetera. There was never a moment where I was just like, where I was more in line with Trump's comment, like, you just lost the radical left.
And the thing is, that is classic Biden. Like, he has never been this radical, sort of abolish the police, community police. He's always been in the center. He's always thought police were necessary, i.e. the crime bill. He's always thought state-sanctioned protection of communities was good. Given the circumstances that have happened in 2020 with over-policing and the sort of ridiculous forms of violence that have been used on people, there has been an obvious call that says we need to reform or fundamentally change the way we think about police. I think that is a good imaginative framework. It seems obvious that it's never going to happen just based on the structure of America. But like Trump wins politically because he's just like, this is stupid. Like, why would we get rid of everything? And Biden's like stuck in the middle where he's like, bad apples, blah, blah, blah. Whereas Trump could say the bad apples thing and still get away with it. But Trump just goes in and he's like, no, police are good. And then Biden's just like, yeah, like we need to do these reforms, which alienates all the people that are having this new imaginative way of thinking of the police. It doesn't get you the Republicans who are like law and order. So now you are literally only appealing to the center. And I guess the question is, are people in America in the center on the context of the police where they believe we need to have community policing and more resources and we don't need to abolish them? I don't think that's true. I think you either have get rid of them or you have double down. I'm not sure how many people are like, yeah, we need to like have a community policing mixture of police.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I don't know, right? This was much more of a conversation like in the early to mid 90s.
Yeah.
And the conversation is gaining resurgence again. The problem is that the smoke has not cleared enough for us to be able to objectively ask people who are not influenced / prisoners of the moment about their views on it. Because in light of what's happening right now, it's very, very divided in terms of being like either we get rid of them or we reinforce them right now.
Or substantially decrease their budgets or things like that, maybe not get rid of them.
Yeah.
But you don't have this mixture of both options.
And at the very least, if you do, you don't know it, right? Like you're not, like there is nobody right now that you can accurately poll that will give you a centrist viewpoint and give you, because at that point people start asking you questions like, well, in light of like this Breonna Taylor thing, how do you reform this system that is so far gone?
Right.
And at that point people either have to pick a claim like it's not so far gone, which is a little ahistorical, or they have to double down and then be like, you're right, it's too far gone, and we gotta defund the police.
Right.
Both of those options are like fine, but it's a lot harder at this point to make the centrist argument than it is to double down on one side.
And the thing is, doubling down in a debate is what wins, right? Because debates are about competing viewpoints going against each other.
You need a position.
You need a position in order to defend
Moderacy is no longer a position in a polarized America.
Say that again. That sounded fire.
I don't think moderacy is a position in a polarized America. It's like,
yeah.
So I think that
I mean, it's what we do in our debates, right? In our debates, whatever topic we have on this podcast, we pick a side and we wholeheartedly defend it, and we deal with the like crazy stuff we have to say in defending it for the purpose of the debate. But it gives us a point to start with. And I think Trump on a lot of, and we'll talk about the climate change stuff, but just in his example, he wouldn't agree to the Green New Deal. Yeah. So you're on his website. It says the Green New Deal is a crucial framework for Biden's climate strategy. Well, it's like, okay, so you disagree with like a couple parts of it. Oh, the part where you have to like get rid of fracking, which is one of the biggest parts of, like, so what is your position, right?
Well,
and I think that's the
and
problem.
that's the big thing. That's the portion that I think undercuts Biden's message, and we'll talk about Biden's grand strategy, because Biden's grand strategy can be reduced to, I think, like maybe less than 10 seconds of commentary. He doesn't have a plan. That's his comment in regard to Trump. But if you can, the condition for victory at that point is, can you name the Biden plan?
Right.
And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. I do want to stay on the question of race for just a little bit.
Yes.
And there are two things I want to talk about in regards to that. First is I want to talk about the CRT racist stuff.
This was a good part. This was a good part.
So Trump has asked the question, why do you think, or why did you get rid of teaching critical race theory, or why are you pushing policies to get rid of teaching critical race theory in schools and getting rid of sensitivity training for police? His response...
Can we define that real quick? What is CRT training in the workplace or...
Yeah, so it is about understanding the way that kind of whiteness operates within certain spaces as a signal of privilege, the way that race influences how we act in certain environments, understanding that it is a pervasive kind of institution in America, and that we have to game plan our actions around it. So the point of it is not to make objective and overarching claims about how race operates, but to say that race is an important factor to consider when we think about everything that exists within America, especially institutions like policing.
Right, and it's not meant to give anyone a PhD in critical race theory or understanding race relations, but it's just to introduce people. It's like when you're getting older and you're like in, 7th, 8th grade, and you start to notice your friends actually are different than you physically, where you didn't notice that when you were 3 years old, and you start to recognize those differences implicate the way you guys all live the quote-unquote same lives.
Right. So basically the point of CRT is to say that anyone that says I don't see color in America is lying, and that we need to see color in order to figure out how to resolve the problems that we have internally about how color operates. Now, Trump's response to this is, I got rid of it because they are teaching very racist things. It was a very reverse
I'm not gonna lie,
racism.
that shit was hilarious.
He literally was like, CRT is reverse racism, it's anti-white, and then the comment that he makes that is kind of the totalizing comment is, people that are teaching CRT and sensitivity training, which is something that has been
like
affirmed.
Diversity and inclusion, things like that.
He was like, they are teaching all these people to hate America. And
his base actually understands that argument very well.
Yeah.
Because they're criticizing the fundamental structure of America as a imperialist, colonialist.
Yeah. Now, I have personal views on this, but I was just like, that can't legitimately be his answer, right? I was like, that can't be his answer. He's got to say more. But he literally slipped the punch, and he was just like Donald Trump was Floyd Mayweather, yesterday. It was just slipping punches.
No, you're right.
And then he was like, on to the next point.
And he was unapologetic about it. He's like, it's racist.
Yeah, he was like, I think teaching that race is a thing that affects America is racist. Next point.
Which buys into the sort of individualistic libertarian philosophy, which is that you are an individual and you can pursue and make your own decisions through individual actions. But that ignores the fact that there are systems that affect individuals differently, which I think is the whole point of CRT when you're teaching it in the most general way.
Right. I will say, I think that Trump made that was arguably the most off-putting moment where he was just like it's like, this is objectively a lie. This is objectively fear-mongering. In terms of what you are saying about CRT and sensitivity training, which is something that's been affirmed by administrations,
ACLU,
all over.
Southern Poverty Law Center, all of these organizations.
But at the same time, just it achieved an objective that Trump had the whole time. And I'm like, if that's true, what do you do? For real.
You're asking what does Biden do to respond to that?
Yeah, because Biden's response was, there's nothing we can't solve in America together. And I was like, that's not a response to what he just said. He just said that teaching about racism in America is racist. And you were just like, but we need to hold hands together. And I'm just like, that's not a great response. And it doesn't take advantage of the moment that he really just tried to affirm that reverse racism is a thing.
And again, this goes back to being polarized and how that helps. Because Trump has a position. He's telling people they need to worry about their race, ignores the fact that they're in the freest country in the world and they can do whatever they want if they believe in themselves. Obviously, we know that's a little bit tainted and it's whitewashed. And Biden just says we need to hold hands and work together. So Biden didn't again pick a side. So I guess what you're trying to say is, or what I think you're trying to get at is, Biden needed to be like, you needed to turn the argument that Trump was saying and that this type of training is good and have specific reasons for it.
Yes.
Because if he got up and was just like, white people don't get racial relations, a lot of them are in our police force, we need to train it to make them more sensitive when they pull over a black person, that's good. I think he would have got brownie points for that.
For sure. And
I'm just saying we need to work together.
Especially when your focal point, again, is we need an understanding of how these things actually work. We need a plan.
But that's because Biden he doesn't know, he doesn't care. Like, I think that's the other thing, he doesn't care about.
So this is something, I want to talk about this point quickly, but I do want to talk about things that, because you and I are, like, we live in, like, New York, we went to school in New York. A majority of our friends, at least a majority of my friends, I think, are like black and
Hispanic. Yeah.
Watching, like looking at the backlash after the debate, or kind of like the response after the debate, I saw so many black people posting, like, the thing that I learned after this debate was that I don't think either candidate cares about black people. Like that.
No,
and I'm like, true. That is a really disappointing message to leave the debate with.
Yeah.
But the question is, does it hurt one party more than the other?
I don't think it hurts Trump that much because we already knew he didn't care.
Yeah.
Like he
was like black people, you should vote for me because you're dead either way. You might as well.
Basically, he said that, and he also said that I've given you guys more jobs. And again, I think his economy thing is just such a strong point because he can be like, if I've lowered the African American unemployment rate, you can't say I'm racist.
Ooh, I want to talk about that later too because Biden made an interesting point about that that I wasn't sure what the stat was on. I literally was watching confused, and he was just like, yeah, Trump is going to be the first president to ever leave America with less jobs than he came in with. And
I think that was because of the COVID thing he was referring to.
Okay.
And we'll talk about the COVID thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it didn't help Biden, this whole race relations stuff.
I do want to take on a moment where where Trump pulled like a standoff thing. He looked at Biden and was like, because Biden was talking about how the police needed more assistance, right?
Yes.
Trump was like, name a law enforcement group that supports you. And remember, at the entire time, Trump was like, we don't have time for this, we don't have time for this, we don't have time for this. He literally said, name a law enforcement group that supports you. I'll wait, we have all day for this point. And just look at it.
Biden couldn't name any, right?
Yeah, of course not, because there's no law enforcement group that supports Biden.
That is really good.
I was just like, wow.
There's a lot of people in the country who support police, man. A lot of people got distant family members that are police. A lot of people think it's a job in which you have to really risk your life. And if you got the support of the entire law enforcement of America,
Donald Trump said, "Show me the receipts," and then crossed his hands. He was like, "I'm waiting on a response." And then Chris Wallace is like, "Well, let's move on."
And the thing is, I don't think Biden ever had that moment where he was like, "Show me the receipts," close his hands on the race relations, right?
Yeah.
He didn't have a moment where he was like, "Name me a multicultural, inclusive organization that supports you or that has endorsed you," right? Like he's never had that moment where he's like, "Does the ACLU care about?" Like he's never had those moments in the debate.
Good music. Kanye's label. that's the closest to the group.
Bruh.
But here's the thing. It's like you gotta think the race thing was the softball, right?
What do you mean?
Like if they're teeing something up for Biden, you gotta think it's the race thing. It's like it's either race or COVID.
Oh,
and I
yes,
do think he wins the COVID debate. I do think he wins the COVID debate significantly, but you have to think in terms of producing an ethos moment for Biden, it's gotta be the race thing. And
he didn't capitalize.
There was not a home run. The most he got to was first base, which is it's not going to win you any games.
He did not capitalize. He stayed lowercase, and he stayed at first base. All right. Okay. So Supreme Court, how do you think Biden handled the sort of idea that Trump should not be nominating a nominee right now?
So I thought that he was extremely kind of reserved in this, and I think that when I say reserved, I don't mean that he didn't make a point about it. His point was clearly that it is advantageous. He was like, it is morally advantageous in terms of getting the best view possible, given the context now.
Yeah. That
people wait, right? It's like just as a matter of decency in terms of figuring out what the American people truly want. Right. We should wait until the election's over. And truth level, right? This is correct, right?
Yes.
The truth is
that in 2016.
Now that Ruth Bader Ginsburg has unfortunately passed, rest in peace, I think that it has officially become a swing issue. It matters to people. The question of whether or not Trump gets to put someone on matters to people.
Yeah.
And if it is a factor that exists when election day comes, it is something that will influence who people make a decision to vote for.
Now, the thing is, I don't think Trump is wrong on this, because if Obama had the Senate in 2016...
Yeah, Merrick Garland would have gone through.
Right. So can we really say he's wrong, or can we criticize Biden more for not calling out the fact that you're letting it happen?
Well, here's the thing about that, right? One is speculative, right? We can speculate that if he had the Senate, he would have attempted to push through. And, like, obviously, you know, they attempted to rally people in the Senate to flip sides so they could get the appropriate number of votes. So we know that this is true. But the Republicans made an official statement in the filibuster that was like, this is not fair. They were just like, their position was legitimately everything the Democrats are saying now. They're just repeating it. And I think the place where Biden missed an opportunity was just to be like, this is the most hypocritical we've ever seen.
Right.
And Trump even gave him that opportunity. He introduced Merrick Garland first, and he leaned into it. He was like, yes, this is entirely hypocritical. We will do this. I have plenty of time after the election. He was like, even if I lose,
Like, I still got time.
even if I lose, I'm not out until you get inaugurated in January. So guess what? Even if I lose on November 3rd, sometime before Christmas, this woman is getting on the bench. That was his literal comment.
Right.
So he leaned into the hypocrisy thing and was just like, I am a hypocrite. I will fully concede it. It doesn't matter. I'm elected for 4 years, not 3. Suck it. That was his point. And I'm just like,
pretty much.
That might be the most honest we have seen Donald Trump all debate.
And you don't. And now, what could Biden have done to capitalize on that?
At least make some sort of debacle about the nature of that hypocrisy. If he's going to concede in debate terms, if he's going to concede the link, you should read an impact.
Right.
Like, he conceded that he was making a hypocritical move to push in advance, knowing that the American public might. Because Trump literally. So Biden says this. This is the moment where I'm just like, what is going on? It's because Trump doesn't finish a sentence. Biden says the people are going to vote, and then Trump says the people have made their voice known.
Yep.
They
voted.
Now here's the thing. That's the thing. What you just auto completed the sentence. The full sentence would have been, they voted for me in 2016. Therefore, they wanted me to make this decision.
Right.
However, if you watch the clip back, and I urge you to go watch the clip back, Trump says they. So, there's no end to that sentence. And part of that might take into account the fact that he lost the popular vote, et cetera, but legitimately, something hard, goes crazy in his brain, and he doesn't finish the sentence.
You think Trump wasn't finishing sentence? Like, why did not in that scenario he didn't finish the sentence?
Because I legitimately think that he understood that it would have been impossible for him to make that claim. Because if he said, they voted for me, Biden could have been like, well, actually a majority of them didn't vote for you. And then all of a sudden there's a conversation around that.
Right.
But he does not, we think it. We think the claim, and we know what he's trying to say. We know he's trying to say, they voted for me in 2016, therefore X.
Right.
But he never says it himself, which I think is I think is either intentional or it's something that he didn't mean to do.
It's definitely a good rhetorical tool, so it doesn't get into the discussion of 65 million versus 62 million.
Yeah.
Trump asked him, are you going to pack the courts? Biden said he's packing the courts. For people who know what that means, that just means putting more people on the Supreme Court. So instead of 9, it might be like 13 or something. That's better in a lot of people's eyes because there's more opinions, more diversity of perspectives. Biden did not agree to it. Why do you think he did not agree to doing that?
Well, actually, this is one of the few points that Biden made straight up. So Biden said, I am not agreeing. Because so Biden didn't say, I won't pack the courts. They asked, Chris Wallace's specific question was, will you pack the courts? Biden said, I refuse to answer that question. Trump was like, see, he's not answering questions. He's not answering questions. And Biden was like, I refuse to answer this question because if I answer the question, this becomes the crux of the issue.
And what do you think he meant by that?
Literally, he was like,
we distract from the Amy stuff, and we focus on packing it.
Yeah, we distract from the Amy stuff. And the second thing is, I think what he said was, I don't want the Supreme Court to be the swing issue. That's what that claim essentially
But
means.
my question is, why didn't he just say yes? I feel like
because if you say yes, then you lose a ton of moderates that are like, this is an abuse of power / certain people do actively believe that the act of court packing means that you are pushing your view. Because you got to think, he's not packing the courts like it's not an even distribution. If we kick it from 9 to 13, you gotta think that there's gonna be at least 3, if not 4 Democrats in that 4 that he puts on.
And you don't think he can make the argument to America that it's better to have more perspectives?
Yeah, but if you intentionally select perspectives that are from the same side,
but that'll be either side.
Well, yeah.
But if he's in a winning year,
well, that'll be either side in court packing.
Right.
Trump can make the claim that he's not court packing. He's picking somebody that's
it's not politically beneficial for him to say that, even though it would help both sides if there were more people, because they would get to pack more perspectives from their sides.
Depending on if people eventually die.
Right.
It's a weird thing to think about. The Supreme Court, the politics around the Supreme Court is oddly morbid. I guess theoretically not more morbid than like having to deal with things like healthcare, where 200,000 people are dying. But it's very strange to be like, I am setting the foundation for policies for the next 50 years around somebody's death. Like, here's a question.
Why aren't there term limits on the Supreme Court? I mean, I was reading in some judicial journal that it's like supposed to be this appointment of the most highest of the highest political, or not political, but constitutional thinkers.
Yeah.
Which is why you have to give them time to think. I'm like, what the fuck? Like that? What?
Because here's the other thing. You also don't want it to be kind of like an electoral thing, right? Like, wouldn't it be weird if like you had to run for the run for the Supreme Court?
That's the reason.
It's like, yeah, by the way.
But it's political. That's the problem. Like, Amy has views on healthcare.
I think the way that it was set up was like, because you have to think initially that the point of the Supreme Court was that it was supposed to be nonpartisan and was very, very like textual in terms of their interpretation. Like, that's why a ton of people liked Scalia, even though people hated him too. Was because everyone was like, oh, he's really, he holds true to the spirit of what the Supreme Court was.
And the people who are not originalists but see the Constitution as a living, breathing document, your argument is that those people, if they had terms, then the Constitution would basically fall apart.
Yeah, because the Constitution would be reinterpreted every 4 or 6 years.
I can see how that can be a problem, but I do see in a world in which the world is changing, we can't live by 1776 standards and things like that.
Well, there's a lot of people that will make the claim that we do live by 1776 standards in a lot of things.
Okay, let's transition to healthcare. So one of the things from the Supreme Court thing was that Amy, whatever her name is, Barrett.
Barrett.
I saw a tweet about her. They said the Democrats can't call her racist because guess why?
Why?
She has 2 adopted kids from Haiti. When I saw this picture, I was just like, it's Amy, her husband, 4 white babies.
That's crazy.
2 adopted. I'm gonna show you after.
Can I put my 2 cents in this?
Go ahead.
Who cares? Who cares?
It was just hilarious. And I was like, first of all, I did not think she was the type of person to adopt 2 kids from Haiti. Second of all, that doesn't mean you can't be racist.
I'm not racist. I got black kids.
Bruh. Like, so they said she's going to get rid of healthcare, and Trump makes a line that says vaccines are, well, we'll talk about 2 things. Vaccines are coming, and that insulin is lower. The insulin argument, I think he's correct on this, but I think it's because of, like, economic reasons, not because he's done anything in healthcare that has led to prices getting lower. That's kind of like pharmaceutical conditions that have led to that. But second, and more importantly, was what was the first thing I just mentioned? It was insulin and
vaccines are coming.
Vaccines are coming. Yeah. So, what do you think was the do you think Trump got brownie points for saying he's going to get vaccines soon? And we can transition to COVID.
Well, personally, no, because I am a little worried. Because then they were asked a question about, in the COVID segment about whether or not Biden would take it or whatever. But I think that one is that Trump has not done enough to produce credibility in the context of the strength or legitimacy of a vaccine.
Right.
Especially, people are going to doubt the credibility of the vaccine if it's created and or distributed right before the election.
Right.
Because people are going to think that
absolutely
there are going to be so many conspiracy theorists that come out that are just like, they had this the whole time. They let 200,000 people die, and I think there's no win there. Second is that on the question of distribution, I don't think that they have the infrastructure to mass distribute a brand new vaccine.
They're going to say the military is going to do it.
No,
but the military's not coming to your door with a vaccine.
I wish they would. I'm not.
Yeah, and I think again Biden needs to capitalize on this more, which transitions us into the COVID discussion. So let's have a full segment.
Wait,
on COVID.
Actually, in regard to that, and we're going to talk about COVID, like, for sure, but there are transitions, and I think that you were like, we're transitioning into a conversation, and that brought to my mind the question of transitioning into, like, the next topic. And we're gonna do an entire video on this, I believe, on just the demeanor and like Chris Wallace. But Chris Wallace nearly lost control at this moment in particular. Right, when there was a conversation around whether or not Trump's policy 5 days before in terms of like producing access was symbolic, and Trump went after Chris Wallace, just like, no, how dare you? This is partisan, da da da. And I think that that's a really, really interesting way to think about it, because I think that I to some level you have to think that he was attempting to shield a question that he thought was weird. You got to read between the lines in these debates in terms of figure out strategy. Because strategy is not just in what people say, it's in what they do.
Right, and the particular moments in time in which they do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a good point. All right, we'll do COVID for 10 minutes, and then we'll do demeanor, and I think then we'll be done. Okay, so COVID. The biggest thing from COVID in this debate that I saw was Biden. Obviously, this was his moment to be like, this is your country, your economy. You screwed all of it up because you didn't handle the COVID thing correctly. Now, I have a couple of thoughts on this, and then I'll let you talk. I think, from my personal perspective, I don't know what any president could have done when a pandemic like this happens. It is absolutely absurd. Trump is right that it came from China, and it's really not all his fault.
The China plague!
Like, it came from China. What was he supposed to do about it? Now, there were certain things he could have done that were better, like wear the mask and tell people not to drink bleach and stuff like that. That I understand. But to say that 200,000 people died because of Trump, and I've seen this a lot on Facebook and Twitter, I'm just like, I think people are kind of stupid when you say that. Like, if Biden was there, like, I think a lot of people would have died as well. Now, semantics, 180, 200, it's still a lot of people. Because this is something that you can't control. Trump could not go to every single state. By the way, the country was shut down for a month. Every business. So and this will transition into what I want to talk about mainly, which is I don't think Biden capitalized in making strategic arguments about COVID other than saying this is your fault and like attaching this generic blame to him. There was one point where Biden said we've lost hundreds of thousands of jobs because the country was shut down for a month. And me and my sister looked at each other. We were like,
you would have shut, you definitely.
Everyone wanted to shut, Trump was the one not trying to shut it down until Fauci literally put him in a hole and said you have to shut down the country.
Okay.
I don't think there was any strategic value to what Biden did on COVID. And I think it was supposed to be. Because Trump fucked up on COVID.
Okay, so this is where you and I have finally, I think, our first, differing thought. So, I don't think that. So when you say, if you conclude based on the presumption that you don't think that Biden did anything strategic in the COVID debate,
I really don't.
I gotta disagree with you there.
Right.
I think that Biden wins the COVID debate, but I think part of the reason is because Trump throws it away. So at one moment, right, Trump attempts to make a claim that if you were here, it would have been a lot worse.
Yes,
right?
he said 2 million instead of 200,000.
2 million instead of 200,000, which I was like, you're lying. But at that point, Trump has now set a premise, which is that the president has to take blame for whatever happens.
Yes.
His claim is, if you were president, you would be just as responsible for however many deaths. There is an equal proportion, which delegitimizes the crux of the initial claim you made, which is that it doesn't really matter who the president was. Trump is making a claim that it does matter who the president is, and that's the reason why he's good. Now, at that point, I have to then think that there's blame there. And I think the other point where this really happens is when Trump brings in the H1B1 and swine flu thing. Because he really tried. He was like, y'all sucked during H1B1 and swine flu. And then Joe Biden is just like, yeah, but 14,000 people died, not 200,000. Now, granted, the world was ready. We had gone through that before. There were a ton of factors that influenced the reason why.
I guess my point is I think Biden needed to pinpoint very specific things, and this is the part of Biden that's just not a cutthroat debater. He should have said, at the point where a president tells people to swallow bleach or to get rid of it. Those are the lines I was looking for. But for him to generically say, it is your fault because you're president, which I agree with you, presidents have to take responsibility, but then not pinpoint what he could have done different. I think the closest he got to it was the masks, which Trump turned the whole point by showing his mask and making it a joke. I don't think you get any benefit because everyone already knows that Trump didn't do the best with COVID.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you on that front. My thing is just I have to. So I think that Trump threw the COVID debate away because instead of just being well, we have managed the literally he could have just been the rhetorician he always has been. We have managed the conflict to the best possible nature.
Yes.
And it is a conflict. Like this was one of the few times that Trump has said things like China plague, and people didn't even bat an eye. Because in our minds, we were just like, well, this is technically the right argument, right? It's just like there are too many factors that made it uncontrollable. But as soon as Trump made it a question of like, you would have been net worse because you would have been responsible if you were president, I think that he shifted the dynamics and meant that the entire 200,000 number then affected him. You're right that Biden did not step on his neck.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But I do think that Biden objectively won that debate.
But maybe Biden didn't win, Trump lost.
Well, yeah, I mean,
because I don't think he turned the COVID thing into
that's too semantic when you're talking about a presidential debate. People are now looking at Trump as being like, you are unfit, or at least in the context of COVID, unfit in terms of like dealing with COVID. Now again, this comes down to the original thing I said before, which is that there are differing goals and objectives.
Yeah.
Like, you are correct that in the grand scheme of the debate, the goal and objective that Joe Biden had meant that he had to step on Trump's neck. Our coach used to tell us this.
For COVID particularly.
Yeah, for COVID particularly. Our coach used to tell us this. He was like, treat them like roaches, step on them, and when they twitch and wiggle, step on them some more. He's insane, and I love him for it. But Biden did not do that. Biden won the point. It was cool, but that was not the objective there. When somebody is responsible, in your words and your opponent's words, when they are directly responsible for the death of 200,000, and, quote, Trump's own scientists say that he could be responsible for 200,000 more in the future, right? When that happens, you've got to take advantage of that, not just from a technical standpoint, but from a rhetorical one.
And that's what I don't think Biden either forgot or wasn't. I mean, like, if you were going to coach him on something, it was going to be this COVID thing. And I do not think the coaching showed through in terms of being able to adequately say that this is your responsibility. Well, you got that this is your fault, not pinpointing moments in which you could have legitimately done something. Like, maybe shut down more for another couple weeks or something, right? Like, if we had shut down all of April and May, all of April and May, and a little bit of March, maybe we would have had a lot less deaths because people wouldn't be going on spring break.
Right.
But he said, no, we lost jobs because you shut it. That's when I was just like, look, like, what are you saying? This is the argumentation was so incohesive at that point.
It is the wrong warrant, but you are correct about what happened. But then when people see disconnects like that, they start to delegitimize the entire argument you've made. And I think that it's one of those things where it's just like, I think he's right in all the wrong places and wrong in all the important places. And it's just like, that was a central theme of the debate. I don't think it cost him, but my God, the amount of offense he could have generated in the context of this COVID thing, he slightly missed the mark. But again, I objectively, if you gotta pick a winner on the COVID point, the objective answer is Joe Biden.
We are going to be talking about the infamous $750 paid in taxes point that was brought up. So, just like when Trump said grab him by the pussy, and that came out a couple of days before the Hillary presidential debates, I think this was an organized attack by the left media, which I'm happy with. To be honest, I think they did a really good job putting out this $750 tax return, because I think they had it for a while, right before the presidential debates. And again, the theme of our coverage has kind of been that Biden just didn't take advantage of these moments. Biden did not say that you are a crook, you are a criminal, that you've got away with paying so little taxes, that there are school teachers who pay more taxes than you. He didn't have those rhetorical moments.
Well, he didn't make the school teachers thing, I think. I think the school teachers thing was like one line.
One line? Okay. So maybe
it was like a solid one-liner. And I was like, oh.
Nothing that really stood out to me. What stood out to me was Trump said, and this is when me and my sister looked at each other like, damn, this is a good point. Your administration gave all of the tax loopholes, particularly around depreciation and real estate. Trump's a big real estate guy. Basically, you can buy a property for a lot of money, say that it depreciated in value, and don't have to pay the difference in those millions of dollars that it depreciates, which reduces your tax burden a lot, to be able to say that your administration gave me those laws. So, David, at the point where Trump says your administration, which goes into the sort of 47 years of you doing nothing or doing the wrong thing, gave him the ability as a private citizen to be able to do what any private citizen wants to do, or any business person, which is pay the least amount in taxes, do you think he was able to appeal to a lot of Americans by saying, I did what was strategic because of you?
Yeah, and he actually said that. He was like, I believe at one point he said, I don't want to pay taxes.
Yeah.
He was literally like,
he said, as a private citizen, before I came to public, which was so stupid. He's like, before I became a president, I'd never wanted to pay taxes.
Yeah.
I was like, so now you want to pay taxes? Like what?
Like in my mind, I didn't get it, but I was like, that's a human moment of just being like, I am somebody that works in my best interest. And the point of this is to say I am somebody that works in my best interest, but I am not a criminal. Right. Which it's really been the stereotype that Trump has been fighting. Right. It's just the you are a criminal stereotype. Like from the impeachment trials all the way till now, it's just the idea of Trump as a crook, a snake oil salesman, etc. is something that he's had to fight. And he's like, look, I'm just a man. A man that doesn't want to pay taxes, just like the rest of you. The only difference is I can take advantage of laws that Joe Biden creates.
I thought that was devastating, man. Because Joe didn't ever respond. He also sidewayed out of it. I forgot what he said, but I remember just watching the debate. He didn't answer because Trump plain asked me, "Why did you give me these loopholes?" Right? And I was watching another real estate developer yesterday talk about these. He's like, "The loopholes are ridiculous. Like, it is amazing how many benefits they are." That was in the Obama administration.
Because we want to produce an incentive for development.
And Trump was like, that means if I'm employing millions of people at hotels and I don't have to pay taxes, that's basically a good thing. And any person with any common business knowledge would recognize the economic argument being made there. How do you think Biden should have capitalized in that moment? Do you think more kindergarten lines of teachers?
Maybe, but I think that the question around that is also one of it's like the specific thing that $750 line was about was in the context of income tax.
Yes.
And it was about the fact that Trump had reported losses such that his taxes would have been low. At some point, you have to mention the context of this, not just the number. Trump is like, I don't want to pay taxes. Fine. But if you intentionally start changing things such that you don't, that is crooked. Right? And that's where Biden had to focus. If you're going to sidestep, you don't sidestep out of the conversation altogether. You don't sidestep a transition out of the point. You sidestep into a version of it you like, which is, let's talk about the actual. We're not accusing you of not wanting to pay taxes. We're accusing you of changing the dynamic so much that you have to pay less tax than a school teacher. I think that it's very, very likely, like any American can wrap their head around the fact that no matter how many incentives you're giving, if you are a self-proclaimed billionaire with hotels all over the world, you should have to pay more than $750 in income taxes.
Yeah.
No matter what the loopholes are, I can wrap my head around the fact that number is small, and especially as somebody that doesn't know the tax code, because let's assume a good 60% of Americans don't know the tax code.
More than 60%.
Right, I'm being generous. 60% don't know the tax code. Now, let's assume that 75% don't know how the tax code influences people at that income bracket. I'm still being generous.
Right.
At that point, for the normal average American, it is so easy for me theoretically to wrap my head around the fact that in order to get to that low of a number, you have to do something illegal.
Yes. Absolutely. That's a good point.
So that's me.
That's a good point.
That's me telling the half-truth.
Biden needs to hire us to coach his ass, bro.
I'm going to let the American public, the way that I'm going to handle this if I'm Biden is I'm truly going to let the American public believe what they want to believe.
Yep.
Even if Trump is technically telling the truth that it is my fault, that there are loopholes, that he did not cheat the system, at the very least he gamed the system. And I am going to get them to believe that those two offenses are somehow the same, because truly, that's what they want to believe. That's why the release the Trump tax return strategy was
weak, man. Because he said the same thing he said in 2015, which was that they're not done yet, which is the most idiotic shit I've ever heard of.
How long? H&R Block finishes my taxes in 3 hours tops. I get it. I don't have as much money as you, but if the numbers come out relatively similar in terms of the income taxes.
Man, I know that I paid more than $750 in taxes last year. So
it took H&R Block 3 hours. It's taken your tax guys 5 years. Fire them.
And I get your shit is complicated, right? You got properties for 5 years, bro. The hours that his accountants must be billing him must be ridiculous. It's all a lie, right? So you're saying Trump needed to attack the character of someone because we agree you don't Biden because you don't. It's not that you're not taking advantage of the tax code. But the fact that you want to manipulate so much to the point where you pay less than $1,000 means that there is a crooked part of who you are. And here's the bigger part, and I want to get your take on this. How does that not influence you being the president?
Yeah, and that's the reason why that slippage, when I was a private citizen, I did this because I didn't want to pay taxes, was the worst thing ever, because You changed? First of all, you ran on the platform that you were going to be private in public office. Remember what Trump's commentary was.
Yep.
I'm going to run America the way I ran my business. I'm
Yep.
going to treat the American economy the way that I treated my finances. So if you treat it, if your platform is I'm going to be the same person, you can't then also pivot your entire point to be like, I'm a different man now. Those are the foibles of a slightly younger man. It's like,
Right.
no, like you are still the same person. You are as crooked as you were when you came in, and that's bad for the country. Your character matters when you are running to be the representative of the country. I think that that's the way
That's
that you
the
slip
point.
the punch in terms of like you set it up. It's like I gave developmental incentives. You turned that into an opportunity to get rid of taxes.
And that's the thing. That's a really good point because I think Biden then needed to answer your administration, right? So I think Biden needs to be logical. Is like, yes, we have incentives, and it's just these are what we call strategic concessions in debate, where like you say you agree with one part of what your opponent said at the first part, and then you turn the premise of the argument in order for it to make sense with the concession. So he should have been like, yes, it's good for real estate developers to get some benefits because they do a lot for the country. However, the overarching manipulation of those incentives, which not only Trump does, but every billionaire does, is the problem. And because you are that person, we're not saying it's illegal, we're just saying it's immoral.
Right.
So get out of office at that point.
Oh,
right?
here's the other thing. Is context and timing matters. When were those developmental programs brought in? They were brought in when the economy was at its like worst.
That's a good point.
We needed that
That is
at the
such
time.
a good rebuttal.
But you've exploited it like it was $750 a year, which means you've exploited it past what was necessary
Yes.
in the first place. Now
Yes.
Trump, like here's the thing. If Trump wanted to, he could have gotten rid of those same codes.
Yep.
Remember, he got in office in 2017. But he did the same thing in 2018, 2019. Like he did the same thing and kept those same loopholes in place. If Trump wants to be like, oh, it was my administration. Yeah, my administration came up with that like in 2015. You could have fixed it 2
When we
years.
were recovering from a recession,
Right.
where we gave you those opportunities, you still manipulated it, so that gives us context, and you didn't do anything. If you thought it was so bad and that my administration gave you those benefits and you didn't do anything about it, then you never really cared about it.
Yeah. So
You
now
might
it's
be
not about
right.
my administration. And at the very least, that administration v. administration debate becomes a wash, and then the debate becomes recentered around: is Trump immoral for the extent to which he exploited the codes?
Yes.
Now, Trump will then obviously have a retort. It's like, I'm not immoral, I'm just smart.
Yes.
But that's a debate that he's ready for. Like, that's a debate that every Democrat's
ready for.
Yeah, that's a debate that every Democrat's ready for. Is Trump attempting to take things that are objectively bad and being like,
It's
these
strategic.
things are strategic and smart?
And that's where I think that's where you just sit back as Biden and you let the American people think, like, do you want someone who says I'm smart when it comes to not contributing to the police officer salaries that you care about so much?
Right.
Is that like that's some rhetoric, right? Like, so you don't want your $750 is what's contributing to the firemen? Oh, but you got all the like, how does a law enforcement agency endorse you when you don't even pay taxes for 20 years to help them get the funds they need?
By the
that's
way,
the type of rhetoric I think would have worked.
By the way, your state taxes, like the actual place that takes your taxes, controls the largest law enforcement bureau like in the country.
New York City.
So
New
like,
York.
That's a double, maybe a triple.
Concrete
whammy at
jungle
that
where you don't gotta pay no goddamn taxes. That's if
point.
you're Trump.
Unless you're a school teacher.
Unless you're a school teacher.
So like I think that there was room to really hurt him there, but I think that as soon as Trump had a counterpunch, Biden
That's what Trump is so good at, man.
played defense, man.
Okay, let's transition to the SALT debate that ended up happening. So apparently the SALT provision is like something that is good for business, bad for everyday people. Trump repealed that in the tax cuts, which was like a good thing. Eventually, it turned into this thing where we talk about China, because now we're talking about literal salt. So like we'll transition to the China thing. Trump, what's his name? Biden said, "Art of the deal became art of the steal. China's been stealing from you." For someone who's decently kind of educated on what's going on in politics, I thought this argument just didn't make sense because Trump's been fighting a trade war with China.
But what a fire rhyme!
What a fire! What?
What a fire rhyme!
Rhyme? Yeah, but like there was no substance behind it.
You gotta give him that, man.
It was a good line.
Joe Biden is Drake's ghostwriter. He's got it in him for sure. But I'm just like, you gotta admit.
Don't disrespect Drake like that.
I'm gonna I said it specifically because you're here. But I mean,
He only had a couple of lines on.
Nope.
No,
don't you dare say this.
And he
Don't
addressed
you
this on the Diss Against Pushing. He said Q only did a couple lines. He was packing groceries and he.
Hey, but I think that at a fundamental international level, part of what ended up being so weird was that, like, the context matters, and this is what you were saying in the context of the trade war. It's like, if the context matters, at a certain point, you also got to give leeway in terms of both the concessions and the offensive moves that were made in order to wage the trade war, right?
And then you're saying that's Trump's fault.
Well, I don't know if I'm necessarily saying that that's Trump's fault, but I do feel as though at a certain point it undercuts Biden's message
About China being the art of the steal.
Yeah.
Because I think Trump's been saying, literally, China's been stealing from us. I'm trying to get our farm. That's why I was just like, this line is weird, because it's obviously pre-rehearsed. I don't think Biden's smart enough to think about that on the spot. But it's like...
It's also not... It's not too authentic of a line.
It's absolutely not. Like, saying shut up, man, was way more authentic and rhetorically powerful. So I think on the taxes thing, Trump got away with it, and Biden didn't blame him the way he needed to. And
just like the taxes.
Yeah, just like taxes. And then on China, again, like, I didn't even know why he brought that up, because Trump, I think, gets a lot of points for China. He's been hard on China.
Actually, most international people that hate China love Trump.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't fuck with China, man. Like, they just don't. Because China has some shady shit that they do when it comes to business.
Hey, one way or another, I think the taxes thing, so this is something that we haven't really talked about yet, but I think that it's worth talking about, is the future of these debates, right? So first and foremost, there are a lot of pundits, including myself. I don't really consider myself a pundit, but for these
we are officially political pundits.
Boom!
Wearing a hat and a pink shirt on a podcast.
Well, one way or another. Here's the thing. So I don't know if there is an incentive for these debates, and I think we'll talk about this more when we talk about demeanor.
Yeah.
But I don't know if, one, there's an incentive to continue these debates on either side, especially on Biden's side, because I don't know if it really, if it serves the purpose that Biden wants. But I think more than that is, like, as a framework, like there's got to be some issues that carry on, right? There are going to be more issues. More things are going to come out. The political machine is churning on both sides, which means that they have things that are waiting. They have things waiting in the wings, the same way this tax thing came out a week before the first debate. There are things we haven't seen yet that are going to change dynamics and are going to become new issues that become new questions for whoever the next moderator is.
Right.
Maybe Chris Wallace again. Maybe. But...
about that.
Right, but you got to think this taxes thing will become a thing again. I don't know. I just
don't know if there's an impact to it, man.
Yeah,
because Trump, he was smart. He paid less taxes.
But they're fishing for something, and you got to think at some point that they're gonna try this again.
If grab him by the pussy couldn't get, like, I don't know what the hell taxes is gonna do. Because this is what I'm saying. Hillary had the setup right before the first debate.
Because we care more about money than women.
Yeah, but
in this country we do.
But I think most people agree with Trump in terms of how smart he was in not paying taxes. I get what you're saying, though. Most average working people are like, this bullshit. But a lot of his supporters are blue-collar workers who pay more than $750 in taxes, and they really can't afford to be honest.
Yeah.
So it's just such a weird paradox that he just gets to get away with because of the aura of Trump. Like,
yeah, I really do think in addition to that, the race thing and the COVID thing will become
bigger things,
parts of it. I don't know if the development of the Supreme Court is going to change how people think very much, but yeah, I think that it's worth noting what issues will become like further things. In debate, we have a concept called iterative testing, right? Where you read something, somebody reads a response, and then you go and make your argument better and bring it back.
Right.
Iterative testing will be a function of a lot of these debates if there are future ones, because I think both Trump and Biden, at least their teams, should take this debate as an opportunity to learn a lot about how these debates are going to go down, the perception of the American public, and how they need to maneuver in order to make their most offensive points stronger in order to mitigate their opponent's most offensive points.
We're going to be talking about the climate change portion of the debates and let you guys know two competitive national champion debaters' thoughts on how those two presidential candidates debated. Number one thing that stood out for me was that Biden made a concession that forced Trump to basically tell him he's alienating a lot of the AOC type supporters, which is that Trump or Biden does not support the Green New Deal, even though on his website it says that that is a crucial framework for his progress on climate change. How do you think Biden handled the climate change point? Do you think he needed to double down? Do you think he needed more rhetoric?
I think they needed more of an explanation, Loki. So, like, my thing is, again, this is just, the strategy of Biden is just to be like, there's no, like, that Trump does not have an actual initiative. This took place a lot in terms of how the debate progressed, and when asked, Trump was just like, but you support the Green New Deal. Yeah, you support the Green New Deal. And I think Biden was just like, it's one of those things where a word has a lot of baggage.
Yeah.
Right? So, Biden was making, again, another collective assessment about whether or not, like, it was worth appealing to the, quote, radical left in favor of, or rather against the moderates. Because that word has baggage that affects the way that moderates perceive a global climate change policy, at least as it relates to things like economic development as well. So, he makes a move to say, I don't support the Green New Deal, and his exact words are, I support the Biden plan. And he's like, what's the Biden plan? And then I was just like, honestly, at this moment, I can't really remember. He did say something. There was something he said, I believe in regards to giving money to businesses in Brazil so that they don't deforest the Amazon.
Biden said that?
Yeah, something like that. But it was just like, it was like that's the only thing I remotely remember. And I was like, I don't have a cohesive vision of what the Biden plan is, and I like, if you're gonna center your framework around that, you need to center more of it as like, not just he doesn't have a plan, but like, I have one that works. And even if I know about that, I don't know why it works. I just know, for example, that we might be able to pay off people in the not to deforest the Amazon as much. I don't know what that does in the context of reversing damage to the ozone layer. I don't know any of that. Now, of course, this is a presidential debate. 2 minutes is not enough time to be able to explain that. But you at least need to put the pieces out there so that people can start doing research, so that people can care more. I just don't know what the plan is.
Yeah, I was also kind of lost around this, because this is where kind of my beef with Biden has been the whole time. I don't think he cares about anything. I really think he just cares about getting power, because climate change is such an existential.
My God.
I mean, it's true. He botched the racism stuff. He botched the COVID stuff. The climate change debate, to me, is where he has a clear policy advantage that is beneficial for two parties. A, the people who don't have jobs or are basically losing their jobs right now. We're talking about coal miners. We're talking about people in industries that like the automotive engine that's basically being phased out with electric vehicles, things like that. He has jobs for them with the Green New Deal or the Biden plan or whatever. He has a lot of jobs. I've done a lot of research on the solar, wind, air industry, and there are so many jobs to be made of just installing solar panels, of having more electric car companies, of applying more windmills.
Expanding industry is always good for jobs.
And then the climate, like, I don't know what more could have happened in 2020 that could have made us realize that the climate is fucked. Outside of the Amazon forest, the wildfires, the red sky. Like,
what was the thing in Australia? It was like from Australia.
Tree fires, yeah, dust.
There was something that was like from Australia to California, and it was like it was literally like a diagnosis of just hot spots for like environmental disaster,
right?
Like globally.
And this is really important because, again, the desensitization. I saw a clip the other day of a Trump at like some council, and they asked him about the 120 degrees in California, and they were like, so what are you going to do about it? He's like, that science is false, we'll be fine. And it's just like, no one cares about him saying that because we are so desensitized to it. I think it was Biden's burden in the climate change debate to be like, look, for all the people who want to vote for Trump, we will have better jobs for you if you allow us to get rid of fracking. Second of all, you will have a fucking planet because we won't be doing the crazy shit we're doing right now where we're reducing energy prices by fracking into the planet. We don't need energy that is the same as oil that we discovered hundreds of years ago. We can transition. That vision is something AOC can communicate. That vision is something that I think more of the left-wing group of the party, Bernie, is a little bit better at it. But Biden's just so stale. He was just like, I have the Biden plan. And then Trump gets to win the argument by being like, what the hell is the Biden plan? You agree with the radical leftists. And this goes back to our conversations, if you guys have been watching our coverage, which is that you have to pick a position. If you're going to say the Green New Deal is a crucial framework on your website, I mean, I don't know what you're disagreeing with at that point.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm a little curious about what, at this point, I'm curious about what crucial means. It's just like, there's got to be some crux of the plan. You can't
that
just
you
be like,
don't agree with if you're not agreeing with the Green New Deal.
Like, it can't just be like the thesis argument, warming's bad.
Right.
Like that can't be the framework.
That's just not a policy proposal.
Right. It's like everyone that plans, because at this point, if someone doesn't agree that warming's bad, they're not going to vote for you. doesn't but they're not going to vote for you.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. You have to understand who your audience is. Like Debate 101, you are not talking to the Republicans who don't believe in climate change. You're talking about to the people on the left that are not. Well, this is a good question. That are apathetic, and some people on the right. But you're looking to people who want a new world in which there are new jobs, new industries, and we save the one planet we have. And I think Obama, with doing the Paris Climate Agreement, did such a good job stressing the importance rhetorically of the climate. I don't think Biden has the same energy. And I also think he didn't grill Trump on getting out of the climate agreement. And he didn't mention that it only takes into effect in 2021. Like, he pulled out in 2017, but it takes 4 years for you. So he should have been like, yo, if you're watching, we literally have a couple months before it's absolutely irreversible and we alienate the rest of the world.
So that would be the way to push pressure in the context of this election.
And create urgency. And Trump's biggest argument was, why are you talking about the climate? China and India do a horrible job. It's like, yes, and I think Biden needed to say, we are the free world leaders. If we set the example, others will have to follow. And if we pull out of the Paris Climate Accord, there is no way we can expect China and India to now be better model countries for climate change.
Here, like that's the really weird part. It's just like, at that moment, I was just like, in what world, if you're Trump, is it a good argument to be like, and the standard is China? Because, like, you know, if the Chinese are doing it, then, you know, we have the right to do it too. And I feel like that's a moment to just be like, yes, but we are not China. We don't have to be China. We are not India. We don't have to be India. We can be better. We should be better. We will be better. Biden 2020.
This is just such a big point, because people that you're in my age are going to have to deal with the ramifications of climate change. And I think, like, Biden is speaking to a lot of first-time 18-year-olds when if he could clearly articulate, we have one shot at this. Like, I think we've ignored how much of an existential crisis it is because of COVID, and, like, when your loved ones are dying, like, you don't care about some climate change thing. But now that it's lessened down a little bit, we have to get back to the importance of this. Like, red skies are crazy. Imagine waking up and you see the sky is red. That's some apocalypse shit. And I think Biden, like, he just doesn't know how to communicate. And there's actually people getting entire PhDs in science communication, right? Because this is a big field, and how do we communicate climate change is bad, so people don't get apathetic towards it.
The wildest part about that, so I remember when we were remember when we went to, like, camps for, like, debate? Mm-hmm. So we used to have this guy that used to, like, teach us philosophy, right? And I forgot what the philosophical point he was trying to teach us about was. His name was Marshall Thompson. Oh, you remember Marshall? And Marshall used to just tell us, like, he used to do this lecture where he would, like, talk about how you would wake up one day and things that you objectively knew to be true would become objectively false, and you'd have to wrap your head around it. It was like, how do you realize that something is wrong? And he was like, what if one day you woke up and all the grass was orange? Right? And he was taking a bunch of things, like, all the grass is orange, the sky is the floor, and the floor is the sky. And then he was like, what if you woke up one day and the sky wasn't blue? And I was like, you realize we're, like, living in that world now, right?
Right.
Like, I took a picture of the moon yesterday because it was like, or like 3 days ago because it didn't look like a moon. Like,
and the point the Marshall was trying to make there, one of our debate instructors, was that lets you know something is wrong.
Right? Yeah.
So the whole point is, like, if the sky is red, something's wrong.
But, you know, apparently there's nothing wrong. Which is the interesting thing. So I really do think that you're right about the initial point you made, which is that there is a level of apathy that now exists in the context of climate change that should worry us.
Yes.
And for that same reason, I believe that this part of the debate is a wash. So, long story short, in terms of my views of this debate,
I agree with that, yeah.
I think that this might have been the most pointless debate,
Absolutely.
The biggest waste of 2 hours I've personally ever spent. Outside of maybe one.
Well, it was funny. It was entertaining.
I don't know, man.
It was humorous.
I guess.
Shut up, man.
It gave us something to talk about.
Shut up, man. Bro, that shit was hilarious.
Like, you're right. But at the same time, it's just like, for its initial purpose, it makes no sense as a debate. And this is part of what I think produces a disincentive. But I think that what it shows on the concept of climate change is that there's just not enough care from either side for it to even be a point.
Because they're also old as, like, they don't care. They're gonna die before anything bad happens. They're both, it's like 75. What, they got 10 years left, maybe? No, I'm serious, bro. Like, old people, I mean, I've seen some comedy bits about this. Old people don't really care that much about existential problems because it's not existential to them. It doesn't change their existence. Which brings up why we need someone, like, younger doing this stuff. But, yeah, I think also Trump was able to say, like, we have low gas prices, we have low energy, we are energy independent. That was his sort of terminology because of the America First thing that he got in. I think that, you know, you said it's a wash. I think that's a W for Trump, though, right?
What, saying?
Because he's characterizing Biden as saying we're going to make us rely on getting oil from Saudi Arabia. And his point is, if we're getting oil already, let's just do it at home. And that's where I think Biden needs to come in and be like, no, oil's bad. We need different shit. And he just wasn't able to do that, which again is why I think he capitalized on this.
That makes sense. Just like, I don't think that, like, for me, again, I'm stuck in a position where I'm just like, differing perspectives, right? It's not one of those things that's clear-cut presumption. If there is, small risk, then it means that they've won this point. I think I'm not sure why the Saudi oil thing is a sufficient starting point for Trump to be like, I don't know why that's so giant that it gets Trump a W when the subject is climate change.
Yeah.
Because he was there were so many points where he was just like, I'm the guy for the economy. I think that if the question was about the economy, he's got a way stronger internal link when he talks about things like healthcare and talks about the provision of private healthcare, et cetera, for like people, and like his claim about like jobs and rebuilding the economy post-COVID. I feel like all those things are a way cleaner way of explaining why Trump is, better for the economy than Biden is. So I don't know why the Saudi oil thing really matters. Like, sure, people will think about it when they're in gas lines and they see the prices going up or down, or they see the lines becoming longer. But like as a immediate issue for how we think about the economy, I don't know if that particular claim about getting oil from the Saudis factors that much into people's decision-making calculus.
Well, we know one thing, that we're kind of fucked when it comes to climate change, no matter who wins.
Good luck with the warming. And I say that knowing that I will have to watch this video, listen to it as a consumer, and that I will be saying it to myself.
What did you say about warming?
Good luck with the warming.
Oh, good luck with the warming.
Good luck to all of us. We got a lot of problems.
Well, this podcast is getting pretty hot. So. We're going to talk about what's going to happen if Trump loses. So this was really interesting. This is probably the scariest part of the debate for me, because Trump kind of started to look like a dictator at this point. They asked, if you lose, will you concede? Biden said, yeah. Trump said, I'm not going nowhere. What were your thoughts on
that? Well, if you ever needed a image, so there was one moment initially, it was weird. So do you remember when before when they asked the question about the Supreme Court, and then Trump was like, I have a lot of time after the election?
Yeah.
And like what he was talking about was the fact that even if the election is decided in November, he doesn't have to leave until January when Biden is inaugurated, right?
Right.
In my mind, I could have also read the double meaning around that as being like, it don't matter what the election is. I got lots of time. I got
to do stuff.
I have an infinite amount of time because I'm not leaving. And then at the end, he was just like, look, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything about peaceful transition, blah, blah, blah. Basically being like, I plan on staying no matter what. And that, to me, I agree with you, is terrifying because it erodes the very nature of of a democratic election, which is that once a result is created, voted on by the people, and voted on by a process that you have to agree to. You literally have to sign papers in order to get yourself on the ballot in places. You have already agreed to this process, and now you're reneging on that and just being like, no, we're not doing this.
It was scary too, because he was like, he tweeted something a while ago that had like Trump 2024, Trump 2028, Trump 2032, and he had it's like the song in the background that just showed Trump until like 2084. Now obviously that's a joke because he's not going to be alive till 2084. He's a pretty old guy right now. But the idea that someone would say, "Hey, I'm gonna keep being here over and over and over again," that sounds like a fascist.
That also could be a reference to his kids. He could be talking about a monarchy.
And that's weird, man. And every president, no matter how screwed up they've been, they've never disrespected the office in the context of their terms, right? Because Obama could have been like, I'm not leaving. Like, I'm not giving it to this egomaniac. He didn't deserve to be. But he was like, no, whatever happened, happened.
No. That man had to go. So could you imagine if the first black president was like, you know what? I like it here. I'm not leaving.
That would have been bad. But see what I'm saying? If Trump says no, does he have the military on his side?
I don't know.
The military against the people?
I don't know, but like that's
because Obama theoretically could have done that.
Yeah, but that's what it takes to start a civil war. So that's a better question. If Trump makes a decision that he's not going to leave, do you think this country is going to war? because that was the question, right? The initial question that Chris Wallace asked was, one, will you agree, or sorry, the second part of the question was the will you agree to concede if you lose, but the initial part of the question was, will you encourage your supporters not to be violent until the election result comes out? And that's the, because given the incredible like amount of mail-in ballots that's going to happen, and of the law that says that Trump passed that said that you can't process elections, or you can't process ballots until election day, like you can't even set them up for distribution, we're likely not going to know who the president is on election day. Like, it's gonna take longer than election day. So the question was, will you encourage
And
your
Trump
people to
said,
stay calm?
what did Trump say again? He was like,
Basically, I'm not gonna say anything.
And Biden was like, no, I'll make sure we wait peacefully.
Yeah, that was a position. Biden was like, yes. He was like, Chris Wallace asked a yes/no question. Biden said yes. Trump was, for the first time, the person that did not take a position. And I was like, low-key, not taking a position scares me more than saying no.
Yeah, because if you're like, nah, go out into the streets and rebel against the fraudulent democratic process, people will do that, bro. Like, his base, I feel like they would do that.
But the other thing is, like, the dog whistles. Like, when you don't, like, the way that he responded is like, it wasn't just, I refuse to concede and you should refuse to let them kick me out. It was like, this is the stake, the country is at stake, you should defend the homeland.
And specifically, he mentioned when he said, people who are supporters of mine, because he literally said, if you support me, go to the polls on election day and watch. I'm like, what does that mean? It's like, he's like, watch, make sure nothing's going on. And people will obviously misinterpret that, and like it's like the Pizzagate thing, right? Where you saw something, it was a conspiracy. So people will go to the polls and be like, oh, Philadelphia, because it's been mentioned in the news, is conspiracy, they're screwing away his ballots. And they might like do bad stuff there.
Right. And
that would be scary, and if that happens on November 3rd, that would lead to a political crisis, a Civil War-esque era like never before. Modern era.
I don't want to say things like that because it's just like, it's terrifying. But like, it really could.
We're looking
at a flashpoint right now.
He sent tanks to the Black Lives Matter protests. Like, that is literally the military. You know what I'm saying? Like, that, like, the shit you thought you couldn't have seen happen, it happened. And the crazy thing is now, again, Biden didn't say a word. Biden.
Well, so for that,
he didn't take advantage of this.
So for that part, they actually were like, I believe Chris Wallace was like, everyone needs to be quiet.
This is where you don't need to be quiet.
Yeah, but that's when the interruption is necessary. It's like, yo, he's encouraging a war. He wants you to kill each other.
I would have looked to the camera and be like, are y'all serious? Like, do you see what's going on right now? He's not telling people to have the peaceful transition of power that Obama gave to Trump was so handled in such a, unique and interesting way, because you're literally giving the hands to someone who is a megalomaniac based upon the things that you've seen in the media.
But here's the thing, it's like,
and it was peaceful.
It's commonplace though. It's like, no matter how much people disagree with each other, the transition between Bush and Trump was peaceful. I meant Bush and Obama. The transition between Bush and Obama was peaceful. Between Obama and Trump was peaceful. Like, the transition of power has always been something that we regard in like such high standards.
It's
and
as
part
big
of
as the First Amendment.
Right, because it matters for, like, the way that someone comes in matters for what their initiative is going to look like. Like, imagine if someone has to take the reins after, like, a coup. It fundamentally changes how difficult it's going to be for them to manage the country. Like,
if they have to go with a coup.
Yeah, because, like, you're literally taking over a country that is destabilized. Like, there's no such thing as just hopping peacefully or hopping, like, just in step into, like, a country that has just gone through a coup. And that's what it's gonna take. If Trump says, I'm not leaving, like, that's what it's gonna take. I think that point is, like, really, really bad, but at the same time, I don't know how bad it is. Because, like, that can easily be played off as, like, just rhetoric. It's like Trump just being like, I'm not leaving because the election is unfair. He can place the burden on
That's my point. Do you think he has a point when he says if it's unfair? I don't think he has a point with the mail-in ballots. I don't think the numbers are on his side. But do you think he can convince people he has a point? And do you think Biden didn't effectively put a nail in the coffin on that point?
Well, here's the thing. It's like, I think that Biden is going to try to manage civil unrest. I don't know, because this is unprecedented. Like I really don't know the answer to this question about how we manage this.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like there's got to be a scenario where someone has refused to concede before. Like, it has technically, like in 2000, there was a refusal to concede, which
from
led
who? From
I believe from Bush, which
that led to the Supreme Court.
yeah, we had to like recount the votes in Florida again, and then there was finally a declaration that Bush was the president, blah blah blah, which didn't lead to civil unrest, and I feel like there will be something similar here, but like that's different. That was someone being like the votes have not been properly tabulated. That's not someone being like I think the entire process is so unfair after it's had to go by the Electoral Commission, et cetera, et cetera. That's him being like after all is said and done. I will still believe that this election is unfair because of the conditions under which it was administrated. And I'm just like,
some scary shit, man.
I don't know about that.
The guy was like, I'm not going nowhere, man. After he's like, shut up, man. Yo, if Biden said shut up, man, like a guy in the 70s who was high. Well, shut up, man.
Well, I mean, he was really trying to, put pressure and just be like I don't know. I feel like it was his attempt to be like, I'm taking a stance, but it came off very memeable.
The only time where Trump, we'll talk about this in demeanor. We'll leave it there for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I think for the peaceful transition of power, we have no idea what's going to happen. I hope that nothing crazy happens, but I heard this from somewhere. But the season finale of 2020 is going to be very interesting.
Oh God.
So
there are a bunch of theories that are just like we won't make it past 2020.
Really?
Yeah. There are people that like. I remember on an episode.
Get us to 1,000 subscribers before we make it 2020.
Okay. No, we're not taking advantage of the apocalypse. Are you crazy? But I remember in an episode that we did prior, I listed off a series of horrible things that had happened until like June of 2020.
What date was that?
I don't remember. I don't remember, but I had a whole list of just things. Australia's on fire. We discovered aliens. Dinosaurs are a thing again. Kobe died. Rest in peace. I didn't even. Was that before or after Breonna Taylor? I'm not sure. But I have no idea. I have no idea. But what I do know is there's just a ton of terrible stuff that's happened in 2020. Like it's really high on the list of worst years ever.
It's up there.
We got
clear vision for 2020.
We got a pandemic. It's like let's see, because World War I ended like I think 1918. I could be wrong about that. My history teacher will probably hate me for being wrong about that. And then we transitioned from 1918 into a global pandemic, which was the influenza pandemic in 1919. So that's a really big transition. But then similarly, we've had a ton of horrible things happen, and the pandemic in 2020. So it's got a rival in 1919 at least, which is one of the worst years we've ever had. The question of will we make it is a tough one. And the answer for 200,000 Americans and a ton of people around the world has objectively been no. I just hope for everybody that the answer is yes. But I also don't want to contribute to fear-mongering. So let's just leave it there.
It's a sticky place to be. Is the presidential misdemeanors or demeanors that basically...
Stop calling it misdemeanors.
We're going to talk about how we thought Trump and Biden sort of acted, some of the best lines they had, their rhetoric, how they presented themselves. Let's start off, though, with the winner of the night, Christopher Wallace. Let's talk about Wallace.
They're not inviting that guy back.
Yeah. So I think people have given a lot of flack because I don't know how moderators could have handled it differently. David, do you think, like, he just wasn't assertive enough? Because I think he was assertive.
Well, here's the thing. So, Chris Wallace, what's today? Let's see. Today is the 30th, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, that is what it says right here on my calendar. Chris Wallace is easily the most memed person on September 30th, 2020.
That is a fact.
The number of people that are just like either putting images of like I saw one that was like the true moderator that we needed last night, and it was a picture of Samuel L. Jackson.
That was funny.
There was like memes calling him like a kindergarten teacher that are just like he's trying to manage them like a bunch of petulant like kids, and I'm just like, yes, I do agree it is tough to manage those two people, but you've got to think that you've been training for this, right? You got to think that you have to, like, you're ready and up to the challenge, and he just objectively was not.
So what did you want him to do then?
I don't know, but
you wanted him to like
anything but that.
Because when you're fighting with Trump, I think anyone would have been fighting. Trump was the problem. Let's agree to that. I mean, Biden interrupted a couple times, but it was mainly Trump.
Yeah.
And Wallace couldn't control him. I don't know who else could control him.
I don't know either. so the question of whether or not he is a comparatively better moderator than any alternative, it doesn't matter to people though.
Because when we think about moderator, we think about someone who asks tough questions and doesn't let the point slip away, gives them the time to talk, and like digs deeper.
Because
so maybe you gotta dig deeper.
You have to remember, Chris Wallace was also. He's done this before.
Yeah.
Like he was
He's
chosen.
been in politics for years.
He was chosen because he did a great job in the past.
Yeah.
This was.
I think it was just Trump being so crazy with his interruptions.
But this was his off night, and.
All right. Well, let's talk about some good lines then.
Okay.
So I am the Democratic Party. What did you think when you heard that?
I was like, oh, this is interesting. He was like, they were talking about how, or Trump brought up a line about how the Democratic Party had put out a platform that was like different from the one that Joe Biden had said that he was affirming, and then Biden was like, I am the Democratic Party.
Yeah, that was very like Batman sort of just. Like,
I was like, ooh, Joe
like
Biden.
because when he said that, I was like, oh, he can actually make sentences because that was in the first couple minutes, and he's ready. Like I really didn't think he was gonna be because I've just seen too much evidence of him stumbling over his words.
Yeah, but I mean, the line itself was good, but it was like, I don't know if it was.
It appealed to moderates for sure, not the radicals.
Yeah, I mean, the radicals just like, oh my god, he thinks that he's in control,
which he is.
When
he says, I am the Democratic Party, what I thought at that moment was like, oh, he's basically saying, Trump, I'm here and I'm coming for you. But it was also kind of corny in my head because I'm like, bro, like, then that's why Trump had a good buddy. It was like, well, if Elizabeth Warren, he didn't call her that, obviously, but if Elizabeth
just call her what he called her. He said, if Pocahontas, continue your point.
If she didn't drop out at strategic moments and Pete Buttigieg and all that stuff, then Biden might not have been the candidate, right? It was very strategic how the Democratic Party got out of the.
Trump also did say you beat what did he call him? What was the nickname he gave for Bernie?
I don't even know.
Was it socialist Bernie?
He said something about socialists.
It's Sleepy Biden, Pocahontas.
The point is,
he was like,
Trump had a rebuttal.
He was like, you beat Bernie by very few because Trump was like, well, what about Bernie supporters? Bernie supporters don't support you. He was like, I beat Bernie, and they're on my
yeah,
side.
and that didn't come off cool to me, bro. It's like, yeah, I guess you beat Bernie, but it just didn't feel like you deserved to beat Bernie. I guess maybe this is the Generation Z in me talking or whatever, but it didn't.
You liberal, you radical.
It didn't feel authentic, man. Like, but anyway, I thought it was a good line. Yeah, I'm a Democratic Party.
I am the Democratic Party.
I am. It sounds like the intro to like a movie where there's like.
Yeah.
I've done more in 47 months than you've done in 47 years. I thought that was fucking amazing.
That was great.
That was phenomenal.
That's a very random number, but then at the same time, it's not. It's an interesting way for the numbers to line up. It's like, it has been 47 months. He has been here for 47 years. That's the kind of thing you couldn't write, but you also had to write.
And I think Biden's needs to have been like, yeah, in 47 months you screwed up more than I screwed up. I don't know how you would finish that I've done or something, but like he had to flip that line because that line.
He was just like, no, you haven't. But like, I don't know. I feel like that's too.
Trump has the beneficial of recency bias, right? Mm-hmm. He actually has done stuff that we know about. Biden, we don't know. He probably has done a lot more, Biden. But
yeah, I mean, like the other thing is that he's done. You have done stuff in 47 months as the president of the United States. Biden's never been the president of the United States. He's been the vice president. But if you also if that's the debate that you're gonna have, and you give all of Obama's like credentials to Biden, then Biden arguably has done more than you have in 47 months. But like that doesn't make any sense. Like I feel like it's like one of those things where it's like one, comparing apples to oranges, and two, it's just like you need to be more offensive and be like the things that you have done are bad.
Right.
You've had 47 months that have been highlighted by X,
by
Y, and Z.
tax cuts, by 200,000 people dying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other lines that you have?
Yeah, I mean, early on, Biden comes up with the shade. We've obviously talked about the "Would you shut up, man" line. There was an interesting line with the double entendre, where Chris Wallace is like, hold on, Mr. Trump, let him finish, and then Biden's like, Trump doesn't know how to let somebody finish. And I was like, in my mind, I was like, that's an interesting line.
Yeah,
because I was like, you're right, because he interrupts, but also, I wonder what Trump's wife has to say about that. But
yo, imagine if Biden came with that fire.
It's like, you don't know how to let somebody finish. I was like, whoa, what did that mean? I was like, I'll assume it was
no,
just about
but
that
the thing is, Trump would not be beneath pulling that same line against him.
Absolutely. Remember when Trump was talking about
his hands, right? Like if Biden was like, he won't let anybody finish, especially his wife. Oh my God!
Imagine. You can't say that.
No, but why not?
You can't say it.
Why not? That shit. I would have said that. I wouldn't have given a fuck. Why not? That's the most hilarious shit ever.
I mean, it is, but like my mind went there, and I was immediately. My first thought was, I probably shouldn't run for president yet. Granted, I wasn't born here, so that's not gonna happen. But
they might change the law. Yo, Ted Cruz wasn't born here either. He was trying to it's weird, bro.
But yeah, that don't know how to let somebody finish line. I was like, that's interesting. Another line that came up is like, Trump's a liar. We all know that, which was like, it was fine. And then there was one that was like about things that Trump gives. Trump was talking about how much of a giving president he was, and he was like, look, Trump sends us wishful thinking, and that's about it. And I was like, okay, all these lines are
they don't hit though.
I was like, they're relatively shady, but they don't like they don't slap.
They don't slap.
But
they don't slap like when you were 5 years old and you did some shit in front of your mom. They don't slap.
I hate you so much. I knew something was coming. I was like, at this point, I'm kind of
something was coming, and it wasn't Trump's wife. Like that's for sure.
Stop. I immediately regret saying this.
I want to talk about his son.
Oh wait,
because I think there is some
boom. Let's talk about this.
Donald
Trump.
Yeah, go ahead.
I made the Mayweather line. I think Donald Trump, the most apt comparison at that moment was a judo specialist. And let me explain.
Okay.
Part of how judo operates is that it's about controlling motion, no wasted motion, using your opponent's motion against you, redirection, of like movement, etc., which is why like hip tosses and stuff are so important because you like lock up.
Damn, you know a lot about this.
Yeah, I like martial arts. I like watching people fight. Okay. So it's a strange thing to get used to, but like if it wasn't the UFC and WWE, it would not be like that great.
Right.
But part of what like I was surprised about was like that was Biden's moment. Right, because it was about how like Trump had called people, I'd call like military veterans, like people that were wounded or killed in battle, losers and suckers.
Yep.
And that was his moment. He was like, my son, who was killed in battle, was not a loser. He was not a loser. He was not a sucker. You can't call him a loser or a sucker. I don't know. Some Bo. Was he killed or anything?
I'm not sure if he was killed in battle, but the point is he served a lot.
Right, he served, and he was not. Yeah, actually, you're right.
I don't think he was killed, but the point is he served.
Yeah, he served a lot, and he was not a loser, not a sucker. He was like, oh, your son? You mean your son that was on drugs that got dishonorably discharged? And
that was bad, bro. That was bad.
I've never caught myself doing this before during a debate. Like, I was literally clutched. I was like, oh, he did not. He's like, your son that was on crack.
Son was a crackhead? That's the one he's on. Like, that shit is and I didn't even know that.
And Biden was like, no, not that one. I was talking about the other.
No, honestly, when I saw Biden have to respond to that and talk about, like, addiction's a big problem, I genuinely felt sad for Biden.
Yeah.
I don't usually feel sad. I was like, wow, this is just a poor old man trying to, like, talk about the problems his son went through. And Trump just has this evil... It's like, I don't give a fuck about your problems.
But here's the thing about that. Like, this is the thing that kills me. So I was watching the CNN coverage, right? It was the MSNBC coverage right after the debate because I watched the debate on MSNBC, right? There were 3 headlines that came on. It was like Trump aggressively interrupts, Trump Biden debate full of personal attacks, etc. And then there was like one more thing that was like Trump does another messed up thing. Right? So I got it. But here's the thing. I've always thought about politics as being something that is cutthroat, brutal. Like, we even talked about it here. I remember one of my, like, cold opens in terms of, like, one of these debates was that, like, political campaigns have never, ever been, like, soft. They've never been for the faint of heart. We had a political campaign where, like, I mean, Thomas Jefferson called his opponent a hermaphrodite. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. The election of 1800, Thomas Jefferson was like, John Adams is a sex-addicted hermaphrodite. There was one election where somebody called out somebody's mother and was like, your mother's a prostitute. That was election campaign strategy. It's like, who wants to elect the son of a prostitute? Was the election campaign. It was an election where one campaign was like, one was like, who is this? Who is my opponent? Like these elections have never ever been like soft, and it's like once you introduce something to the political, it becomes fair game to attack.
Right.
right? That's why like the Republicans, when I remember somebody made a claim about like Barron Trump, like Trump's youngest son, and he was like, well, knowing Trump, you might want to make that, or he might want to make that kid a baron, which is like a title of nobility in monarchies.
Yes.
And then they were like, how dare you talk about the president's son? Don't introduce a 10-year-old to this because the political eats people alive, right? The premise was that if you introduce something to the political, it becomes worth consuming, and that any damage that happens to it is fair game in the political.
Right.
Well, Biden introduced that concept of his son into the political. He was
Right.
like, my family is in the political now.
Yes.
And Trump was like, so I can attack your family? And he immediately went for it. And I was like, oh, that moment just got flipped. Like what was supposed to be the standout moment became the moment of pity.
Do you think Trump looked bad for saying that he was on drugs?
No, I don't know. It's strategic. Because you
It's definitely strategic. I just felt like I felt empathy at that moment.
Right. I felt empathy because I'm just like, bro, you should like I know how difficult that struggle can be, not personally, but like I know people that have gone through that struggle.
Yeah.
But like I'm more like sad knowing about like it's the fact that it was addiction to a drug that makes me feel sorry. But it has nothing to do with the fact that that kid
Politically
was attacked because you initially introduced him as I don't want to say political prop, that's reductionist and not fair to Biden at all, but you introduced him into the debate as a subject to be discussed. And it wasn't, he didn't even say Bo. He didn't use the name. He said, my son. So you introduced your family into the debate. Somebody then said, okay, that's fine. Now, here's the moment that Biden could have used. I was actually talking to my dad about this. And my dad and I are like we argue a lot about the political. But like I was like, you're right about this. Because he was just like, the best thing for Biden to say at that point would have been, at least my son tried to serve. When it was your opportunity.
Yo, your dad said that?
Yeah, when
That's
it was
some
when
good
it
analysis.
was your opportunity, you dodged the entire draft, and none of your kids have tried to serve. Yes, my son went through a problem. He went through an addiction problem, as many people in the military do. But at least my son tried because he cares about the country.
And it would have been a low blow,
right?
But it would have been a good low blow.
And it point me to the lie.
Yeah.
And it would have redirected the point of this initially, which is that Trump doesn't care about the military. That was the point he was trying to make.
That was the point. See, this is the thing. The connections of the rebuttals have to go back to the premises that bring up the character attacks on Trump from a Biden perspective. But he's never able to finish the loop.
Right.
And that's just because I don't think he's that good of a debater. But like the opportunities are there.
Now keep in mind, these are the thoughts of some regular African father who literally cannot, by U.S. law, run for the presidency. Yeah. But he made a point that would have changed the outlook of that thing. I guarantee you, if that had been said in the moment, at least my son tried to serve, it would have changed the way we perceive that moment. And it's like, it's kind of like judo. It's like every once in a while you'll lose your footing, but it's possible for you to gain it back. You can get back in position to strike and win. Yeah. But Biden just did not get back in position. And it's like, and that claim is not that hard.
And then let's talk about the Hunter stuff, the 3 million stuff. So I don't even know if this is true, but I don't know if it's conspiracy or not, but I do think Biden didn't disavow it. Like when Trump kept saying, why did China give you 3 million? Why did he get 180?
Biden was just like, my son did nothing wrong.
Yeah, and I'm like, you're not answering. Like Trump was like, did he get 3 million? And then Biden like choked up on his words and was like, no, that's not true. And I'm like, okay, that's not convincing. Like he obviously got some money for whatever reason. Maybe it's not 3 million. And he wasn't ready to say why. I don't know if this points to corruption. I don't really care because the people in the Trump campaign are ridiculously corrupt. His Ivanka, the Goya brand, like all of the money they're building from this stuff. But the fact that Trump is able to redirect it, and Biden, I think at one point mentioned, look at all the people in your family, but he didn't, again, hit it hard enough.
Yeah.
He didn't mention Goya.
Look, I really do think the point of this is just like Biden is trying to play, he's trying to play respectability politics. This is a message to Joe Biden. Joe, he's talking about your family. Like, he really is talking about your family, talking about your legacy. Like, you need to say more. You need to do more. Like, and that's not, this coming from somebody that I'm pretty sure I'm gonna vote for Joe Biden.
I'm voting for Biden.
I'm not, I can analyze objectively and say Joe Biden lost the debate and say I'm still voting for Joe Biden. Because I can compartmentalize that the debate is not just about.
Which is kind of why these debates are just theater. Because if you've already decided by now.
Right. I kind of want to talk about that in a sec. But at that point, I'm just like, this has nothing to do with me as a voter. It has nothing to do with me as like a citizen. It has everything to do with me as a man, and I think that that you should care as well. You're talking about your family, Joe.
All right, so now that we've spent a good hour or so really talking about these debates, it may be longer than an hour. I think we had 2 hours of analysis. It's not bad.
Yeah.
Do the next debates matter? Are they relevant? Do they actually help voters make a decision?
Okay, here's the deal. I think that, like I said before, obligations and intentions matter. I don't think that the purpose of these debates in any way, shape, or form is to deal or like change people's minds. Like I don't think that matters too much. I think that for Joe Biden, he's trying to get people to realize that Trump is an evil egomaniac that will destroy the country if he gets another 4 years. And the purpose of that is to like fire up voters. Like people that
so you think the debates lead to people realizing how absurd one side is, and then
that's the function, right? Like people are already ideologically tied. They're like even if you have not made up your mind that you're gonna vote for one person, you have objectively made up your mind that you're not gonna vote for the other. Like there are people that have objectively made up their mind they're not gonna vote for Trump, and people have objectively made up their mind they're not gonna vote for Biden. The question now is about the intensity of your base. How fired up is your base leading up to like election day? Now, I'm not sure if these debates serve much of a purpose at that point, especially for someone like Trump. Like for Trump, I don't know what the incentive of the debates are because he's always like he doesn't turn the base off.
Yeah.
Like he's always doing things to rally the base. So it's like I don't know if the debate stage necessarily matters in that context. And similarly for Biden, I don't know if it matters either if your performance is going to be this way. Like, because if you want to rally the base, you got to do more than tell someone to shut up. Like, literally, I was like cataloging things that were said in this debate. And I'm just like, at the end of the debate, I don't know why Trump being able to get on a stage and say China ate your lunch somehow means that it was a productive 2 hours spent. I don't know why. Like,
so you think Biden should not do any of the debates?
Well, I don't know if Mike, if it's I think that Biden has an incentive to do so if his campaign can get him to change strategy and be a lot more offensive.
Yeah.
And I think that for Trump, I literally don't know why this is a thing. Like I genuinely.
Yeah, he just looks like I know he's winning rhetorically, but he's also embarrassing himself.
Yeah, but like I guess maybe Trump is making a calculated judgment, or the Trump administration is making a calculated judgment that's just like, if I manage to demolish the field, if I manage to produce confusion in these next 3 debates, that's a win. Because for Biden, the win condition is clarity, right? Clarity on his side.
His position, right?
Right. For Trump, it's not the same win condition. For Trump, confusion will suffice.
Why?
Because he thrives on chaos.
Right.
People are not going to want to vote for Biden if they feel as though, especially if they feel as though Biden couldn't wrangle Trump in a debate. It's like, how do we expect you to deal with Boris Johnson or deal with the Xi? Especially when people have criticized your demeanor.
Right.
They have criticized, like for you, they've criticized the persona, not the policy.
Right.
So you need to be able to clarify the policy and show a persona.
There's a double burden, and you don't have the ability to actually not interrupt because you're crazy.
Precisely, because you operate based on a sense of political limitations and constraints because of the persona that you have marketed yourself on for the last 3 years. Right. Donald Trump has marketed himself on a different persona, which means that he gets access to a whole like repertoire of tools that you don't, right? As Joe Biden. So at this point, I'm just like, all right, I'm not sure whether or not these debates serve a purpose besides giving Biden an opportunity to tell Trump to shut up and giving Trump an opportunity to slightly call Biden a piece of shit, which is what he did when he was like, "You're a number 2, Joe. You're a number 2." I was just like, did he say what I...
Or was he saying you're not number 1, you're always like a loser? Or
yes, he was talking about that, but come on,
you think he was like...
double meanings, we know. Yeah. I was plugged in. I was like, what are all the horrible things they're actually saying to each other that they hope that political pundits never catch?
Yeah.
I think that all news stations need somebody that's just doing that. That's just looking for that stuff.
Right. Yeah, I think the debates are going to be good going forward for Biden if he keeps on his offensive demeanor of actually attacking the policies and clarifying his position. I think if Trump keeps acting like a child and interrupting, it's going to be bad for him. I do think it's not going to change someone's decision, But like CNN was showing some polls last night of people who were undecided, and I'm just like,
in Ohio, they were like, no, we
Yeah,
don't
I'm
like
like-
this guy.
I'm like, debates really do it for you if you're undecided? Like, that's interesting, man.
Well,
For you to not have a political opinion a month away from the election, either you're a fucking idiot, which to be honest, like I was seeing some of these people in Ohio, don't get me wrong, but some of y'all Midwesterners, y'all look stupid. Like y'all, the way y'all are analyzing the debates, the way y'all are like having these, like just so elementary interpretation of politics, and the way you guys are like, I don't know who won the debate or nothing. It's like,
well, do you think there's ever such a thing
That was
as
just
someone that has
dumb.
no perception of politics? Like, do you think somebody just wakes up one day that hasn't thought about the election for the last 3 years, wakes up a month before the election, and is
bro,
like, I
don't vote
suddenly
at that
have
point.
thoughts?
I'm just saying you shouldn't be voting at that point. Not saying you shouldn't be allowed to. I'm saying like if you don't care enough to look at policies inside, and this goes for the people on the left who are just like never looking at conservative positions. But like if you don't do some due diligence, that is the duty of being a civic operating citizen. It is to research. And it's like, if you haven't made up your mind a month in from the election, that's weird to me, bro. That's very weird, which is different from, like, I don't know which way I'm going to vote, but these people are like, anything could sway me right now. I'm like,
A comment,
how?
yeah,
How?
a comment in a debate should not fundamentally change your point unless it's something that was like contradictory. So like if Trump suddenly was like,
Like, the tax returns are going to make you not vote for him after, like,
yeah,
Biden's Hunter controversy is going to make you not vote for him after, like, it just doesn't seem like any of these things, they're just sensationalized theater that we get to talk about. But I don't think
I appreciate it. That I'll say that much. I
It's
appreciate
interesting to
the commentary.
converse about, but
Yeah. Social media is blowing up, so I can't. As somebody that is a fan of social media, I can't really hate. The one thing I will say is, this makes me really, really, and this is a parallel that I think is really different from the last election. I'm really, really excited for the vice presidential debate.
Yeah, I
I
think Kamala
genuinely
gonna put
am.
the chops on Pence.
Because
Like,
remember last time it was Pence versus was that Tim Kaine? Remember?
Yeah, that was boring.
Yeah. Does anyone even remember that guy's like name?
Yo, he looks like
He was the guy that spoke a lot of Spanish, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, he was the Hillary's VP spokesman. He came on the stage. Hola, ¿cómo
He looks
estás?
like he looks like Mr. Who from the Grinch, the Grinch Who Stole Christmas. The dad, Cindy Lou's dad. Tell me Tim Kaine does not look like Cindy Lou's dad, bro.
I can't with you. But that's my thing. It's like I'm more excited now because I think that's a more productive. Like Mike Pence is arguably closer to being a policy wonk than Trump is, and Kamala Harris, while understanding policy, is more of a personality than Joe Biden will ever get to be. So it's almost as though they've switched roles.
Yeah.
It's like the Republican candidate was the persona, the Democratic candidate was the policy. Now the Republican candidate is the policy, and the Democratic candidate is the persona. And I think that change is going to influence the way that those debates go down in a manner that I think is productive and enjoyable. So if this debate did nothing, it made me excited for the vice presidential debate coming up.
Well, there you have it. Thank you for watching our presidential coverage. I'm definitely excited for the debates going forward. We are two former competitive debaters, so we're obviously very excited for debates. We like breaking them down. If you liked our coverage, make sure you check out our next 3 debates that we're covering. We're probably going to be talking about it for 2 hours each on each of those. And yeah, check us out on the other side.